Have you ever been judged before even saying a word, dismissed simply because of the way you look or where you come from? This is the story of a powerful woman who faced that very moment, humiliated and underestimated in front of a crowd, only to reveal a truth that left everyone speechless. What happened next is a masterclass in justice and transformation, and it's a story you don't want to miss. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. If you love inspiring stories of resilience and justice, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to Dark Stories for more incredible tales. Your support helps us share these impactful stories with even more people. Now, let's get into it. The mid-morning sun bathed the private terminal in a golden glow, its sleek glass facade reflecting the bustling activity of luxury travel. Limousines lined up neatly in the parking lot, their polished surfaces gleaming under the light. Inside, elegantly dressed passengers moved with an air of confidence, their conversations punctuated by the faint hum of engines outside. Dr. Elena Harper stepped out of her black car, her heels clicking softly against the pristine asphalt. She was the picture of poise, her tailored blazer fitting perfectly over a silk blouse, a subtle display of her refined taste. Her hair, pulled back into a low bun, shimmered under the sunlight. Her demeanor was calm, almost serene, as she pulled her luggage behind her and approached the terminal entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a quiet hiss, welcoming her into a space of polished marble floors and soft leather seating. A faint scent of fresh coffee and leather hung in the air, blending seamlessly with the understated luxury of the surroundings. Elena approached the check-in counter, where a sharply dressed attendant greeted her with a professional smile. "Good morning, ma'am," the attendant said, her voice warm and accommodating. "May I have your name and flight details?" "Elena Harper," she replied, her tone steady but polite. "I have a reservation for the private jet to Chicago." The attendant's fingers flew over the keyboard, her eyes scanning the screen. Her brow furrowed slightly before clearing almost instantly. "Yes, Miss Harper, you're all set. The jet is prepared, and the crew should be boarding shortly. If you'd like, you may wait in the lounge, or I can escort you directly to the aircraft." Elena nodded. "I'll head to the jet now, thank you." The attendant's smile widened. "Of course, it's gate 5, just past the VIP lounge. Have a wonderful flight." With a brief nod, Elena made her way toward the designated gate, her footsteps echoing softly in the quiet hall, where plush carpet gave way to smooth tile near the private jet entrances. Gate 5 came into view, the jet gleaming like a jewel under the bright sunlight. As she approached, a uniformed man standing by the entrance caught her eye. He was tall and imposing, his posture stiff and authoritative. His uniform identified him as the captain of the flight. Elena offered a polite smile as she approached, but the man's expression remained cold, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone clipped and impersonal. "I'm here for the flight to Chicago," Elena replied, her voice calm and measured. The captain glanced at her suitcase, then back at her, his lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. "This is a private flight, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I think you might be at the wrong gate." Elena raised an eyebrow but kept her composure. "I'm aware, this is gate 5, correct?" "It is," the captain said, crossing his arms, "but this jet isn't for commercial passengers. It's for private clients." There was a subtle emphasis on the word private, a tone meant to underline exclusion. Elena felt the weight of his words but didn't waver. "I understand," she said, her voice firm but polite. "I am a private client." The captain's smirk deepened. He chuckled lightly, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Look, ma'am, I'm not sure what you've been told, but this isn't the kind of flight you just book online. Maybe try the main terminal, they'll get you sorted." Elena's fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase, but her expression remained calm. Before she could respond, another voice interrupted. "Is there a problem here?" A flight attendant, dressed in a crisp uniform, approached with a clipboard in hand. She glanced at Elena, then turned to the captain with a questioning look. "Just a bit of confusion," the captain said dismissively. "She thinks she's on this flight." The flight attendant's eyes swept over Elena, her gaze lingering briefly on her shoes and luggage before flicking back to her face. There was a glimmer of doubt in her expression. "Ma'am," the flight attendant began, her tone neutral but edged with skepticism, "do you have any documentation for this flight? A confirmation number or a ticket?" Elena reached into her bag and retrieved her phone. With a few taps, she pulled up the confirmation email and handed it to the flight attendant. The woman's eyebrows lifted slightly as she scanned the screen, her expression betraying a moment of surprise before she quickly masked it. "Well," the flight attendant said, handing the phone back, "everything seems to be in order. I'll inform the crew." The captain frowned but said nothing, his jaw tightening slightly. He stepped aside reluctantly, allowing Elena to proceed toward the jet. As she walked past him, she felt his gaze lingering on her, a mix of irritation and disbelief etched into his features. Elena took a deep breath as she approached the stairs leading up to the jet. She could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken judgment hanging over her like a cloud. But she refused to let it shake her. With her head held high, she ascended the steps, each step a quiet act of defiance against the assumptions that had been made about her. Little did they know, the real confrontation was only just beginning. The interior of the private jet was nothing short of exquisite. Plush leather seats and a rich ivory hue lined the cabin, their ergonomic designs promising comfort on even the longest flights. Polished wooden paneling gleamed under the soft glow of recessed lighting, and the faint scent of fresh flowers mixed with a subtle hint of citrus lingered in the air. A small dining table was set with fine crystal glasses and an elegant arrangement of orchids, their delicate petals untouched by the hurried pace of travel. Elena Harper stepped into the cabin, her heels sinking slightly into the thick carpeting. Her eyes swept over the space, taking in the opulence that was, in many ways, a manifestation of her hard work and vision. This jet wasn't merely a luxury, it was a tool for efficiency, a mobile extension of her world-spanning endeavors. But her moment of quiet reflection was cut short as she caught sight of the crew. Captain Joel Carter had followed her aboard, his posture stiff with visible irritation. Behind him, the flight attendant, Aaron, whispered to another crew member. Though they kept their voices low, their furtive glances in Elena's direction made their thoughts clear. "She doesn't belong here," Aaron muttered, loud enough for Elena to catch the faint edge of disdain. Elena paused, her hand resting on the back of a seat. Her gaze met Aaron's briefly, and the flight attendant quickly turned away, her cheeks flushing a deep red. "Miss Harper," Captain Carter said, stepping forward, his tone overly formal, "I'm afraid there's been some sort of mistake. This flight was chartered under very specific arrangements, and, well, as much as I'd love to accommodate you, we need to follow protocol." Elena turned to face him fully, her expression calm but unyielding. "I'm well aware of the arrangements, Captain," she said evenly. "I made them myself." Her words landed like a well-aimed arrow. Carter blinked, momentarily thrown off balance, but quickly recovered. "With all due respect, ma'am, these arrangements are highly exclusive. Perhaps you were misinformed." "Misinformed?" Elena repeated, her voice soft but carrying an edge. "By whom, exactly? The aviation department of Harper Global, or the executive team that manages this jet?" The captain's face faltered, a flicker of doubt flashing across his features. "Harper Global, that's correct," Elena said, folding her arms, "the holding company that owns this jet, my company." There was a beat of silence, heavy and awkward. The hum of the engines was the only sound underscoring the tension in the air. Aaron stepped forward, her clipboard clutched tightly in her hands. "Ma'am," she began, her voice tinged with forced politeness, "we weren't given any indication that the owner would be joining this flight." "You assumed," Elena interjected, her tone sharp enough to cut through Aaron's excuse. "You assumed I didn't belong here because of how I look." Aaron's mouth opened, then closed, her face paling. She stammered, "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Elena pressed, her gaze unwavering. "Because from the moment I arrived, I'd been met with nothing but hostility and condescension. If it wasn't about appearances, then explain to me what it was about." The silence that followed was deafening. Carter shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Elena's eyes, while Aaron clutched her clipboard like a lifeline. The third crew member, a younger flight attendant who had remained quiet, looked down at her shoes, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. "I'll tell you what it was about," Elena continued, her voice steady but carrying the weight of authority. It was about assumptions. You saw a black woman walk up to this jet, and you decided that she couldn't possibly be the one in charge, that she couldn't possibly be your employer. And instead of checking the facts, you chose to demean and dismiss me. Carter opened his mouth to respond, but Elena held up a hand, stopping him. I've heard enough, she said firmly, and frankly, I don't have the patience to entertain excuses. She turned to Aaron, her eyes narrowing. You mocked me in front of other passengers. You treated me as though I were invisible, unworthy of basic respect. Is that how you represent this company? I know, ma'am, Aaron stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. You didn't mean to get caught, Elena said sharply. Let's be clear about that. Carter, clearly realizing the gravity of the situation, stepped forward. Miss Harper, if I may, we deeply regret any misunderstanding. This is, of course, a learning opportunity, and we will ensure it doesn't happen again. Elena's eyes flicked to him, her expression unreadable. A learning opportunity, she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. You're mistaken if you think this is a moment for reflection. It's a moment for accountability. She turned toward the cabin door, her movements deliberate. Reaching into her bag, she retrieved her phone and made a quick call. Yes, this is Elena Harper, she said, her voice steady. I need the terminal manager at Gate 5 immediately. There's been an incident with the crew of my jet, and I want it addressed before departure. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence unraveling with each passing moment. Elena ended the call and turned back to face them. I've worked too hard and come too far to tolerate this kind of behavior, she said, her voice resolute. You've made your assumptions about me clear. Now, let me make something clear to you, this kind of prejudice has no place in my company. You've embarrassed yourselves, not me. The cabin fell silent once more, the weight of her words settling heavily in the air. The terminal manager would arrive soon, but the crew already knew their fate was sealed. Can you imagine the shock on their faces when the truth came out? Hold on, this confrontation is about to take an even bigger turn. The soft click of Elena's heels echoed through the cabin as she moved to one of the seats and calmly sat down, her posture as composed as ever. Outside, the warm sunlight played off the metallic surface of the jet, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere inside. Captain Carter and the crew stood awkwardly by the door, their discomfort palpable as they exchanged nervous glances. Minutes felt like hours, the silence punctuated only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. Elena, unbothered by the weight of their stares, reached into her bag and pulled out her tablet. Her fingers glided over the screen as she opened a document, her attention seemingly absorbed by her work. But her calm demeanor was deliberate, every movement purposeful. She wanted them to feel the gravity of the situation, to sit with their actions and their assumptions. They had tried to diminish her, and now she would make them confront the consequences. The sound of hurried footsteps broke the quiet moments later. The terminal manager appeared at the door, his face flushed from exertion. He was a tall man in his early 40s, dressed impeccably in a navy suit that clung to him uncomfortably in the midday heat. His expression was a mixture of urgency and dread, his eyes darting nervously between Elena and the crew. Miss Harper, he began, stepping into the cabin with a deferential nod, I came as quickly as I could. I deeply apologize for any inconvenience you've experienced. Elena looked up from her tablet, her gaze steady and unflinching. Thank you for coming, Mr. Rowland, she said evenly. I trust you've been briefed. The manager hesitated, then nodded. I was informed there was an issue with the crew. I'd like to assure you, ma'am, that we take these matters very seriously. Elena gestured toward the standing crew, her expression unwavering. Then I suggest you start by addressing their behavior. From the moment I arrived, I was met with nothing but condescension and blatant discrimination. They made assumptions about who I am and what I'm capable of based on nothing more than how I look. The manager's face reddened as he turned toward Captain Carter and the others. Is this true? He asked, his voice low but sharp. Carter shifted uncomfortably, his usual air of authority completely absent. There was a misunderstanding, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. You didn't realize I was what? Elena interrupted, her voice calm but cutting. Your employer, the owner of the jet, or someone deserving of basic respect? The manager's jaw tightened, his discomfort evident as he turned back to Elena. Miss Harper, I deeply regret this incident. Rest assured, it will be dealt with appropriately. I'm sure it will, Elena said, her tone laced with quiet authority, but let's be clear, this isn't just about me. This is about the culture of this company. This behavior didn't come out of nowhere. It's a symptom of a larger issue, one that I will not tolerate. The manager nodded quickly, his agreement almost too eager. Absolutely, ma'am. We'll implement whatever measures you deem necessary. Elena's gaze hardened. I've already taken measures. Effective immediately, Captain Carter and Aaron are relieved of their duties. They are no longer welcome to represent this company or its values. Carter's face drained of color, and Aaron let out a small gasp. Miss Harper, please, Carter began, his voice rising in desperation. I've been with this company for years. This was an honest mistake. An honest mistake? Elena echoed, her voice cold. You humiliated me in front of a crowd. You dismissed me without even checking the facts. That wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. And it speaks volumes about your character. Aaron, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward, her hands clasped tightly together. Miss Harper, I truly didn't mean any harm. You were just perpetuating the same bias that's plagued people like me for generations, Elena said sharply. Your intentions are irrelevant. What matters are your actions, and those actions have consequences. Tears welled in Aaron's eyes, but Elena's expression didn't soften. She turned to the manager. Ensure their termination is processed immediately, and make it clear to the rest of the staff, this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. The manager nodded solemnly. It will be done, ma'am. I'll personally oversee it. Satisfied, Elena stood, her commanding presence filling the cabin. Good. And one more thing, Mr. Rowland, conduct a full review of your hiring and training practices. Bias, whether conscious or unconscious, has no place in my organization. I want a report on my desk within the week. The manager straightened, his expression resolute. Yes, ma'am. Consider it done. Without another word, Elena collected her tablet and walked toward the door. As she passed the now silent crew, she paused, her gaze sweeping over them one final time. Let this be a lesson, she said, her voice calm but firm. Respect isn't optional, it's a requirement. And when you fail to meet that standard, you'll find there's no place for you here. With that, she descended the stairs, leaving the crew and the terminal manager behind. The sunlight outside was just as warm, the day as bright as when she had arrived, but now there was a weight lifted from her shoulders, a reminder that standing up against prejudice was as much about protecting herself as it was about creating change for others. As Elena climbed into her waiting car, she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for today, she had made her mark, and she would continue to do so, one confrontation at a time. The low hum of the luxury car engine filled the air as Elena Harper sat in the back seat, her thoughts a whirlwind of reflection. The tinted windows framed the sunlit tarmac outside, a fleeting image of the jet standing still as her car slowly pulled away. She gazed out at the terminal, her mind replaying the confrontation with the crew, every word, every gesture. Her phone buzzed softly in her lap, interrupting her reverie. Picking it up, she saw the name Rebecca Langston flash across the screen. Rebecca was not only her executive assistant but also a trusted confidant who had been with her through countless battles in business and beyond. Rebecca, Elena said, her voice steady as she answered the call. I heard, Rebecca began without preamble, her tone a mixture of concern and curiosity. Are you all right? Roland called my office in a panic about 15 minutes ago. Elena let out a small sigh, her fingers tracing the smooth edge of her phone. I'm fine, Rebecca. The situation was handled. I'm guessing handled means you didn't let it slide, Rebecca said, a hint of a smile in her voice. Good. They needed to be reminded who they were dealing with. It wasn't just about me, Elena replied, her tone reflective. It's about what it represents. If they can treat me like this, knowing nothing about me, how many others have they dismissed or humiliated, people without the power or position to fight back? Rebecca's voice softened. You're right, as always. What's the next step? I've ordered a review of the company's training and hiring practices, Elena said, but that's just the beginning. This isn't the first time I've seen this kind of behavior in the aviation industry, and I doubt it'll be the last. It's time to do more than just react. Rebecca paused for a moment before responding. You're thinking about making this public, aren't you? Elena's gaze shifted to the horizon, where the distant city skyline shimmered in the afternoon light. I am, she admitted. Not in a way that's about me personally, but as a broader conversation about systemic bias. People need to know these things are still happening, even in spaces that claim to value equality and progress. Rebecca's tone turned practical. I'll start drafting a statement, something that highlights the broader issues without making it about today's incident specifically. We can also reach out to your network for partnerships on diversity initiatives. Do it, Elena said firmly. And reach out to the legal team. I want them to draft clauses for stricter anti-discrimination policies across all Harper Global subsidiaries. This isn't just about avoiding lawsuits, it's about setting a standard. Consider it done, Rebecca replied. And Elena, I'm proud of you. You didn't just let it slide, even when it would have been easier. Elena smiled faintly, her grip on the phone relaxing. Thanks, Rebecca. I'll touch base with you later. As the call ended, the car pulled onto a quieter road lined with towering trees and sprawling estates. Elena leaned back against the soft leather seat, her thoughts drifting to the many battles she'd fought to reach this point in her life. Being underestimated was nothing new, she had faced it in boardrooms, during negotiations, and even at social events, but no matter how many times it happened, it still carried a sting. Her driver, Marcus, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Everything all right, Miss Harper? He asked, his deep voice tinged with concern. Elena met his gaze in the mirror and offered a reassuring nod. Everything's fine, Marcus, just another day. Marcus smiled faintly, his eyes warm with understanding. He had worked for her for years and had seen firsthand the obstacles she navigated daily, many of them invisible to those around her. As the car turned into the driveway of her estate, Elena's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message, a brief but heartfelt note from her older brother, Darnell. Heard about what happened at the terminal. Proud of you, sis. You've always been the one to stand up for what's right. Let me know if you need anything. Elena's chest tightened with emotion. Darnell had always been her rock, even when they were kids. His words were a reminder of the strength she carried, not just for herself, but for her family and the community she represented. She stepped out of the car as it came to a gentle stop. The familiar sight of her home rose before her. The grand stone facade and manicured gardens were a far cry from where she had started, but they were a testament to her determination and hard work. Yet, even as she walked through the grand entrance, the weight of the day lingered. In her office, a sprawling space filled with bookshelves and the soft glow of afternoon light filtering through tall windows, Elena sat at her desk. She opened her laptop and began typing notes for Rebecca, ideas for partnerships, organizations they could support, and ways to make the changes she envisioned a reality. But as her fingers paused over the keyboard, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. She thought about the crew, their faces as they realized the gravity of their actions. She didn't relish their downfall, but she hoped it served as a wake-up call, not just for them, but for everyone watching. This wasn't about revenge, it was about change. And as Elena Harper closed her laptop, her resolve solidified. She wouldn't stop until respect and equality were more than just words, they would be the foundation of every space she entered. The evening sun cast a warm amber glow across the horizon as Elena Harper sat on the terrace of her home, a steaming cup of chamomile tea cradled in her hands. The sprawling garden before her, filled with carefully curated flowers and shrubs, swayed gently in the breeze. Despite the serene surroundings, her mind was a hive of activity, her thoughts circling the events of the day and what they signified. She placed the cup down on a small glass table, her fingers lingering on its rim. Across from her, her older brother Darnell leaned back in his chair. He had arrived unannounced shortly after she had settled in, bringing with him his usual calm presence and a six-pack of sparkling water, his contribution to any sibling catch-up session. "You're too quiet, Darnell," he said, breaking the silence. He rested an ankle on his opposite knee, watching her with the kind of attentive gaze only an older sibling could master. "Talk to me." Elena let out a soft sigh, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "It's not the first time something like this has happened, Darnell," she admitted, "but every time it does, I wonder how much of this can one person change?" Darnell nodded thoughtfully, his gaze shifting to the horizon. "You've been changing things your whole life, Elena, whether you see it or not." She smiled faintly, appreciating his words but still feeling the weight of her thoughts. "I can fire a crew or implement new policies," she said, "but does it really shift the needle, or does it just push the problem down the road?" Darnell leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Let me tell you something, little sister, you're not just anyone making those decisions. You're Elena Harper. When you act, people notice. They talk. They reflect. And sometimes, that's all it takes to start a ripple effect." Elena's gaze dropped to her hands, her fingers tracing the edge of her teacup. "But what about the people who don't have the platform I do? What about the ones who are dismissed, silenced, because no one's there to listen?" "That's exactly why you're doing this," Darnell said firmly. "Not just for you, but for them. You're building something bigger, something that lasts." His words lingered in the air between them, a quiet affirmation of the purpose she carried. Elena took a sip of her tea, letting the warmth seep into her, grounding her. "You're right," she said softly. "It's bigger than me." Later that evening, Elena retreated to her office. The room, with its dark wood shelves and floor-to-ceiling windows, was her sanctuary, a place where ideas were born and plans took shape. She sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face as she typed out an email to Rebecca. Subject: expanding our reach. "Rebecca, let's not stop at anti-bias training and policy reviews. I want to create a broader initiative, a platform that actively promotes diversity and inclusion, not just within Harper Global, but across industries. Start by reaching out to some of the organizations we've partnered with in the past. Let's host a summit, something that brings together leaders, advocates, and voices from marginalized communities. I want actionable solutions, not just discussions. Also, let's set aside a fund for scholarships or mentorship programs, something tangible that gives people a path forward. Let's make this count." Satisfied, she hit send and leaned back in her chair, her mind already racing with possibilities. This wasn't just about fixing a single incident, it was about reshaping the culture that allowed such incidents to occur in the first place. As the night deepened, Elena found herself revisiting the memory of the crew's faces when the truth had been revealed. She didn't relish their discomfort, but she couldn't deny the satisfaction of holding them accountable. And yet, there was a lingering question she couldn't shake: had they learned anything from the experience, or would they carry their prejudices into the next chapter of their lives? She opened her journal, a habit she had maintained since her college days, and began to write. Accountability is only the first step. True change requires understanding, an internal reckoning with the biases we carry, whether we're aware of them or not. I can hold people accountable, but can I help them see what needs to change within themselves? Is there a way to bridge the gap between consequence and growth? She paused, her pen hovering over the page. The answer wasn't clear yet, but she knew the question itself was important. The next morning, Elena's vision began to take shape. Rebecca had already responded with enthusiasm, and her team had started compiling a list of potential partners for the initiative. The summit would be a massive undertaking, but Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose as she reviewed the preliminary plans. Later that day, a letter arrived at her office. The envelope, crisp and unmarked, bore no return address. Curious, Elena opened it, unfolding a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was neat but unfamiliar. "Dear Miss Harper, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I felt compelled to write. I was at the terminal yesterday when everything happened. I saw how the crew treated you, and I saw how you stood your ground. I've worked in this industry for over a decade, and I've seen things that made me question why I stay. But seeing you hold them accountable gave me hope. It reminded me that change is possible, even in places where it feels impossible. Thank you for showing us what strength looks like. Sincerely, a witness. Elena stared at the letter for a long moment, her heart swelling with unexpected emotion. It was a small thing, a single letter from someone she would likely never meet, but it was enough to remind her that every ripple she created had the potential to touch lives she might never see. She placed the letter in her desk drawer, a quiet symbol of the impact she was striving to make. Then, with a renewed sense of determination, she returned to her work. There was so much to do, and she was ready for the challenge. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Elena Harper's office, casting soft golden hues over the rich mahogany desk and neatly organized files. Outside, the distant hum of the city served as a backdrop, its rhythm steady and unchanging. But inside, the atmosphere was charged with purpose as Elena reviewed a stack of proposals that had been prepared overnight. The words from the anonymous letter she received lingered in her mind, strengthening her resolve. The proposals, meticulously compiled by Rebecca and her team, detailed potential partners for the diversity and inclusion initiative Elena was building, from grassroots organizations advocating for marginalized communities to corporate allies committed to equitable practices. The list was comprehensive, yet Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something deeper, more transformative. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, her voice steady. Rebecca entered, carrying a sleek tablet and a notepad. Her tailored suit and confident stride reflected the efficiency she was known for, but the warm smile she offered was distinctly personal. "Good morning, Elena," Rebecca said, settling into the chair opposite her desk. "I wanted to go over the preliminary ideas for the summit. We've already had interest from a few key players." Elena nodded, gesturing for her to continue. Rebecca swiped through her tablet. "The National Equity Foundation is interested in co-hosting, which could bring significant visibility. They've also suggested including a panel featuring individuals who've experienced discrimination in professional settings. It could add a human element to the discussions." Elena leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "That's a good start," she said thoughtfully, "but I don't want this to turn into another event where people share stories, everyone claps, and then nothing changes. We need action, commitments, something tangible." Rebecca's brow furrowed slightly as she considered this. "What if we set measurable goals for participating organizations, a pledge to hire and promote a certain percentage of underrepresented individuals within a specific time frame?" Elena's eyes lit up. "Now we're getting somewhere. But let's take it a step further. Offer resources to help them meet those goals, training programs, mentorship initiatives, and access to networks that can support long-term change." Rebecca jotted down notes, nodding as she wrote. "That's exactly what this industry needs. Less talk, more tools." As they continued brainstorming, the conversation turned to logistics. Elena insisted on making the summit accessible not just for executives, but for employees at all levels, particularly those from underrepresented groups. She wanted voices that were often silenced to be heard, their perspectives shaping the discussions. Rebecca paused as she scrolled through her tablet. "There's one more thing," she said hesitantly. "We've received several media inquiries about yesterday's incident at the terminal. Some outlets are asking for a comment." Elena's expression hardened slightly. "I'm not interested in making this about me. This initiative isn't about drawing attention to what happened, it's about addressing the larger issue." Rebecca nodded. "Understood. I'll prepare a neutral statement, something that shifts the focus to the broader goals of the summit." "Good," Elena said, her tone firm. "This isn't about headlines, it's about creating real change." Later that afternoon, Elena found herself walking through the Harper Global headquarters. The building, with its towering glass facade and sleek modern design, was a symbol of the empire she had built. But today, she wasn't thinking about its grandeur, she was thinking about its people. She stepped into the staff lounge unannounced, her presence drawing surprised glances from employees gathered around small tables. The room was modest compared to the executive suites, but it was warm and welcoming, a place where the heartbeat of the company could be felt. "Miss Harper," a young woman said, rising from her chair in surprise, "we didn't expect to see you here." Elena offered a warm smile, motioning for her to stay seated. I wanted to stop by and hear from all of you, she said, her voice carrying genuine curiosity. Your thoughts, your ideas, whatever is on your mind. For a moment, there was a hesitant silence. Then, slowly, conversation began to flow. Employees shared their experiences, both positive and challenging. Some spoke of opportunities they had been given at Harper Global that they hadn't found elsewhere, while others hesitated before recounting moments when they felt overlooked or misunderstood. One man, an older maintenance worker named Thomas, spoke up after a moment of reflection. Ma'am, he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, it means a lot that you're here. It shows you care. But sometimes I wonder if the people who make the decisions up top really see what it's like down here. You can have all the policies in the world, but if the culture doesn't change, nothing else will. Elena nodded slowly, his words striking a chord. You're absolutely right, Thomas, she said. Culture isn't built in boardrooms, it's built here, in spaces like this. And that's exactly what we need to address. The morning was cool and crisp as Elena stood on the terrace of her estate, a light sweater draped over her shoulders. A steaming mug of black coffee rested in her hands, the warmth spreading through her fingers as she stared out at the horizon. The garden below, still glistening with dew, was alive with birdsong. But her thoughts were elsewhere. Today marked the first formal planning meeting for the summit, a tangible step toward the vision that had consumed her thoughts since the incident at the terminal. While she felt resolute, there was a nervous energy beneath her calm exterior. She wanted this summit to be more than a symbolic gesture, it needed to mean something, to accomplish something real. The Harper Global boardroom was an expanse of polished oak and glass, its sleek modernity a testament to the company's success. By mid-morning, the room was filled with key members of her leadership team, as well as a handful of outside consultants who specialized in diversity and inclusion. Rebecca stood near the head of the table, a tablet in hand, her sharp eyes scanning the room as the last few attendees settled into their seats. She gave Elena a small nod of reassurance, and Elena took her place at the head of the table. Thank you all for being here, Elena began, her voice steady but warm. As you know, this initiative isn't just another corporate project for me. It's personal. It's something I've lived through, something I've fought against, and now it's something I'm determined to change, not just here at Harper Global, but wherever we can make an impact. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the group. Elena let the pause linger, ensuring she had their full attention before continuing. This summit, she said, isn't about me or even this company. It's about creating a platform where voices that have been ignored or dismissed can finally be heard, where we don't just talk about change, but make it happen. Rebecca stepped forward, taking the cue. We've outlined a few key pillars for the summit, she said, projecting a document onto the screen at the front of the room. Education, accountability, and action. Under these pillars, we'll host panels, workshops, and roundtable discussions with leaders, advocates, and those directly impacted by systemic bias. One of the consultants, a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair named Mariana, raised her hand. I think the structure is strong, she said, but how do we ensure the right voices are in the room? Too often, these conversations are dominated by people who already hold power, while those who need to be heard are sidelined. Elena nodded, appreciating the question. That's exactly what we need to avoid, she said. I want to prioritize speakers and participants who can bring lived experiences to the table, people who understand the issues not just academically, but personally. And I want to make sure this summit is accessible financially, geographically, and culturally. Mariana smiled, clearly satisfied with the response. If we can pull that off, this could be groundbreaking. Another hand went up, this time from Michael, the company's head of HR. What's the long-term plan? He asked. The summit is a great starting point, but how do we ensure the momentum doesn't fail afterward? Elena didn't hesitate. That's where the action pillar comes in. Every organization that participates will be asked to make measurable commitments, whether it's hiring targets, training programs, or mentorship opportunities. We'll also create a follow-up framework to track progress and hold people accountable. Michael nodded thoughtfully. And Harper Global, what commitments are we making? Elena didn't hesitate. We're setting the standard. By the time the summit happens, I want Harper Global to have a model diversity program in place. That means reviewing every aspect of our hiring, promotion, and retention practices. We'll lead by example." The room buzzed with quiet approval, heads nodding as her words sank in. Elena could feel the energy shift, the initial skepticism giving way to genuine enthusiasm. As the meeting progressed, the ideas flowed freely. Rebecca took meticulous notes as participants brainstormed ways to engage attendees, from virtual panels to interactive workshops. Mariana suggested partnering with universities to involve younger voices, while another consultant proposed a scholarship fund for underrepresented students pursuing careers in industries with significant barriers to entry. By the time the meeting ended, Elena felt a surge of optimism. The framework for the summit was more than just an outline, it was becoming a movement, a collective effort driven by passion and purpose. Later that day, Elena walked through the halls of Harper Global, her steps purposeful but unhurried. She stopped by the employee lounge again, this time to speak with a small group of interns gathered around a table. They looked up, surprised but pleased to see her. "Miss Harper," one of them said, quickly standing, "what brings you here?" "I wanted to hear from all of you," she said, her tone inviting. "You're the future of this company, and your voices matter. What do you think we can do better to create a more inclusive workplace?" The interns exchanged glances, their initial hesitation giving way to curiosity. One young woman, LLA, spoke first. "Honestly, it's inspiring to see you take this so seriously, but sometimes it feels like the changes are happening at the top, and we're not sure how they trickle down to us." Elena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's a fair point. Change has to happen at every level, and that includes creating spaces where you feel empowered to speak up. What would help you feel more connected to these efforts?" LLA hesitated, then said, "Maybe a mentorship program, something that pairs interns with leaders in the company who can guide us and help us grow." Elena smiled warmly. "I love that idea. Consider it done." The conversation continued, with the interns sharing their experiences and ideas. By the time Elena left, she felt a renewed sense of clarity. The summit was just one piece of the puzzle. Real change required listening not just to leaders and experts, but to everyone who made up the fabric of the company. The grand hall was a sight to behold. Towering glass walls allowed sunlight to flood the space, casting prisms of light onto the polished marble floor. Rows of chairs, interspersed with sleek tables, were arranged to face a stage framed by cascading greenery, symbolizing growth and renewal. Banners with the summit's name, "Voices of Change," hung elegantly along the walls, their design simple yet striking bold letters on a deep blue background. Elena Harper stood backstage, taking a deep breath as the final moments before her opening address ticked away. The room beyond was filled with over 1,000 attendees, leaders from various industries, advocates, academics, and those whose voices had been historically sidelined. She could hear the faint hum of conversation, a low buzz of anticipation that reminded her of why she was here. "Ready?" Rebecca's voice broke through her thoughts, calm but tinged with encouragement. Elena turned to her, offering a small but confident smile. "Ready." The lights dimmed as Elena stepped onto the stage, her footsteps steady but deliberate. The room fell silent, all eyes on her as she approached the podium. She paused for a moment, letting the weight of the moment settle before she began. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady and resonant. "Today is more than just a gathering, it's a call to action, a chance to confront uncomfortable truths and commit to meaningful change." She paused, scanning the audience, her gaze lingering on faces that reflected a mix of determination, curiosity, and hope. "For too long," she continued, "we've lived in systems that silence certain voices while amplifying others. We've allowed biases, conscious or unconscious, to dictate who belongs and who doesn't. But today, we're saying enough. Today, we begin to rebuild." Her words hung in the air, their weight palpable. She went on to share her personal journey, not just the recent incident at the terminal, but a lifetime of experiences that had shaped her understanding of prejudice and resilience. "When I was dismissed and belittled at the terminal, it wasn't new," she said, her tone measured. "But what I realized in that moment was that my story wasn't unique. It was part of a larger narrative, a pattern that repeats itself in countless lives, in countless places. And that's why we're here, to break the pattern, to create something better. The rest of the day unfolded with an energy that felt electric. Panels featuring speakers from all walks of life shared stories of triumph and struggle, their words met with nods, applause, and even tears. Workshops encouraged attendees to challenge their assumptions, exploring the biases they carried and how to dismantle them. Leaders made public commitments to measurable goals, signing pledges to implement diversity programs, mentorship opportunities, and equitable hiring practices. One of the most moving moments came during a roundtable discussion featuring young professionals, including LLA, the intern Elena had spoken to weeks before. LLA shared her vision for a workplace where every person, regardless of their background, felt seen and valued. Her words were met with a standing ovation, a testament to the power of her voice. Elena watched from the audience, her heart swelling with pride. This was exactly what she had envisioned, a space where voices that were often overlooked could take center stage. As the day transitioned into evening, the summit concluded with a closing reception. Attendees mingled, their conversations filled with ideas and plans for the future. Elena moved through the crowd, engaging in discussions and thanking participants for their contributions. At one point, she found herself face to face with Mariana, the consultant who had been instrumental in shaping the summit structure. Mariana raised her glass in a toast. "To a future built on action," she said, her smile warm. Elena clinked her glass lightly against Mariana's. "To a future where no one is silenced." That night, as Elena returned home, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. But she also knew this was just the beginning. The summit had planted seeds, but it would take ongoing effort to nurture them into lasting change. She sat at her desk, opening her journal one final time for the day. Reflection: today, I saw what's possible when people come together with open hearts and minds. I saw courage in the stories shared, determination in the commitments made, and hope in the eyes of those who have been waiting for this moment. But this isn't the end. Change is a journey, not a destination. We've taken the first step, but there's so much more to do. I will keep listening, keep learning, keep fighting, because the world we're building is worth it. Setting her pen down, Elena leaned back in her chair, a small but genuine smile gracing her lips. Outside, the night was quiet, the stars scattered like seeds across the sky, a reminder that even the smallest lights could illuminate the darkest of places. And she would keep planting those seeds, one voice at a time. And so, what started as a moment of prejudice turned into a powerful reminder of accountability and the fight for respect. This story isn't just about one person, it's about the change we can inspire when we stand up against injustice. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Dark Stories. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this one. Together, let's amplify voices that matter and create a world where everyone is valued.